Okay, so let's look at question 833, find and replace in string. It's a medium question, and let's start reading it. So you're given a zero index string S that you must perform k replacement operations on. The replacement operations are given as three zero indexed parallel arrays, indices, sources, and targets, all of length k. To complete the ith replacement operation, check if the substring sources at I occurs at indices I in the original string S. If it does not occur, do nothing. Otherwise, if it does occur, replace that substring with targets at I. For example, if S is equal to A, B, C, and D, indices I is equal to 0, sources at I is equal to A, B, and targets at I is equal to the three E's. Then the result of this replacement will be E, 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 C, and D. All replacement operations must occur simultaneously, meaning the replacement operation should not affect the indexing of each other. The test cases will be generated such that the replacements will not overlap. For example, a test case with S is equal to ABC, indices 0 and 1, and sources at AB and BC will not be generated because AB and BC replacements overlap. Okay, that makes sense? Return the resulting string after performing all replacement operations on S. A substring is a contiguous sequence of characters in a string. So let's go into the example. It seems pretty easy to solve. The example here is string S with A, B, C, and D, indices 0 and 2. The sources are A and C, D, and the targets are 3 E's and 4 F's. Your output is 3 E's, B, and 4 F's. That's because we're replacing the 0th index here with the E's, and then we're also replacing the second index, which is C and D, with the 4 F's. And it does occur in them, so it makes sense. And the next example is where you're given the same values, but sources is EC instead, and the targets are E's and F's. Your output is the 3 E's and then C and D. That's because we're replacing AB at index starting with index 0, and that happens because AB exists, but then EC does not exist in this, so it's only CD, and if it says CD here, then it would have just been E's, 3 E's and 4 F's, but that's not the case. So because it does not occur at index 2 in the string, we do nothing, and that's it. Okay, so let's go into the explanation and then solving the problem. Okay, so let's go into the explanation of question 833, find and replace in string. So how do you solve this question? Well, we're given a few different items in the example on Leetcode. We're given S, which is equal to a string of A, B, C, and D. And then we're given three different lists: indices, sources, and targets. Now we know that all three lists are parallel. So for instance, the index 0 in indices goes hand in hand with sources at index 0 and targets at index 0. So 0, A, and the 3 E's are going hand in hand. The 2, C, D, and the F's go hand in hand. Now, I have created a few other items here that help us solve this problem better. One, we have a duplicate of the string that we're given, which is called S1 now, and that's the string that we will be returning. It's the one that we will be making changes on as we move throughout the program. We're also tracking the shifted value. That I'll explain more as we get along with it, but essentially what happens is we need to take care of filler characters. So if, for instance, our target is length 3, but our source was only length 1, then we need to make sure we take into account two characters that existed so that the next time we call upon index, we're not off by 2 characters. So shifted is actually going to take care of this by adding it onto index so that we can get rid of the filler characters that we had previously implemented. So here, once we get to this point, I have a note that if we have a check here that if the string S from the index to the index plus the length of the source is equal to the source. Then we go into this if statement. That essentially is saying that if from string s, from the index that we're at, so 0, until 0 plus the length of source, so 0 plus 0 until 1, is equal to source. And in this case, it is because the string s from index 0 to 1, not including 1, is a, and then source is also equal to a. So the if statement is met. And since it is, then we make our index equal to the index plus the shifted. In this case, there's not going to be any change because there is no shift because we haven't made any insertions into this. So there's no changes. And now we would just go and update the position 0 here, or the character A, with the 3 E's that the target is requiring us to do. So that's what happens here. And now the next item is to update our shifted. So we know that we need to add 2 filler characters in there so that the next time we call upon, or the next iteration of this, we need to make sure that you're not off by 2 characters. So in this case, what you do is you do the length of the target, which is 3, right, minus the length of the source, and that returns 2. And so you add that to shifted. You keep the value before. You don't make shifted equals to 2. You just increment the value of shifted by 2. So we see that shifted becomes 2 now. So the next thing we need to do is go on to the next parallel values in our lists that were given to us. So that would be 2, CD, and 4 Fs. Now for this iteration of our loop, we need to again do the same thing we did before, where we check if in string s from the index to the index plus the length of the source is equal to the source. So in this case, it would be from index 2 until 2 plus the length of this, which is 2, so 4. So in this case, from on string s, from 2, which is right here, until 4, not including 4, is C and D. So we compare C and D with the source C and D, and they're both equal. So we can go inside this if statement. Now the if statement, again, is going to actually add index plus the shifted. In this case, now we actually have something in shifted. So our index is going to get incremented to 4 instead. And now we know that the next value that comes in, or the change that we're making with target, it's going to be starting the 4th index right here. And so the next time, now we need to actually replace the characters in the string. So CD are going to get replaced with the 4S, but now we actually know where to start replacing it, which is the right position. So we see that the 4Fs have been replaced. And now the last thing to add here would be to update our shifted value. So again, updating our shifted value is to do the length of the target, which is in this case 4, minus the length of the source, which is 2, and then add it onto the previous shifted value. So here we get 4. And the reason why we're doing that again is because we need to add the filler characters. In this case, there were 2 extra values we need to account for. Before we only had 2 values, now we're adding 4 instead of it. So we need to take care of the 2 extra values that we're adding in, and that goes into the shifted. That's pretty much it. That's just how you solve the question. I'll go into the actual coding implementation of this program next. Okay, so let's start coding the solution to this problem. As I mentioned before, we will need a duplicate string of the string that's given to us. So we're going to name it S1, and it's going to be equal to the string. And this is how you do it in Python, where you just make a duplicate of it from the existing string from the start until the end. We also have a variable that I defined called shift, and that we're going to initialize with 0. Now, there is a cool thing you can do in Python where you can zip values together. Instead of having to, go by index or call upon the first iteration of something else, you can zip the 3 lists that are given to us and then just call upon the the variables inside of it. So you can do something like for index, source, and target in zip of indices, sources, and targets, right? So we're getting the value index, source, and targets. Like I mentioned before, it would be something like the 0, A, and the 3 E's, right? Now we're using those characters, and then we need to do that if statement to make sure that the character in those positions are equal to the source. So how would you do that? You would just write an if statement here that goes into the string s from the index until the index plus the length of source. And this has to be equal to source. And this is just saying that from the index 0 until 0 plus 1 which is a, it has to be equal to a, and that is true. Now, since it is true, I mentioned that we need to update our index, including the shift value in there. So, because in the first iteration it doesn't really matter, but then the second, third, fourth iterations, and so on, the shift matters a lot, and the new index value matters a lot. So we're just going to call index to be index plus the shift, right? And now we would actually have to do the replacements. So the replacements inside of the S1 would just be the S1, which is equal to S1 from the start until the index. So everything before it, everything before the index, in this case 0, plus we add the target to it. So now the target we're adding is the 3 E's. And then to this, we also add the rest of the string, right? So we would do S1 from index plus the length of the source until the end. So that's just saying that from the value we're given, so from A, B, C, D, it's saying from index, so 0, plus 1, from 1 until the end. So from B until the end. And we're adding that on top of the 3 E's that we previously added. Okay, and once we do that, now we just have to update our shift. And our shift, as I mentioned before in the explanation, it's just the length of the target minus the length of the source. And that's pretty much it. And then you return the S1. Now, on the second iteration, what's going to happen here is we see that this if statement is going to be true because CD is equal to CD, and then index is going to be equal to 2 plus the shift. The shift becomes 2 from the last iteration, so it'd be index 2 plus shift 2. And then down here, we would get everything until index 4, right? Because 4 was just updated right here. Index was just updated to 4 up here. So everything until 4, and that would just be, I'm just going to make a comment here on the top. That would be something like EEE, BCD. That was what you had after the first iteration. It's just saying that get everything until index 4 plus the target, so now it would be F's, and then everything from there until the end of S1, but there's nothing else, so you just keep that, and then you're left with this, which is the output we're looking for. So that's pretty much it. Now there's a key thing we need to note here. It doesn't say that the values we were given are going to start with the 0 index. It just says that you're just given indices. So it could be that the 2 came before the 0. So how do you resolve this? And it's pretty easy. We can just sort all the 3 lists that we're given. But a better way to do this would be just to sort it after we zip the values, because then you just have to run something like sorted here, and then it sorts it by the indices because it's the first character, first value in that list that we're looking at. So it sorts it by the indices, and then the sources and the targets also get sorted based off of that first index, so they always stay in parallel like they were supposed to. So I'm just going to run this. Let's see. Okay, it runs, and then I'm just going to submit it as well. Oh, so it didn't work. So There is a issue here. I forgot to add a plus equals. So I mentioned that you can't just make shift equals to the new value. We have to append it to the previous value. So make sure you add that plus equals, and this should work. Yep, there we go. That's it. That's how you solve this question. Thanks.